wanted to welcome you to our George Bellows exhibition, which we're delighted to have organised with the National Gallery of Art in Washington DC and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And it really marks the beginning of what we're hoping will be a wonderful strand of American art programming.
It's really extremely exciting to show Bellows' work here. He's not a terribly well-known artist in Britain, and I really hope and believe that people will find this exhibition a very exciting discovery. George Bellows was born in 1882 in the Midwest of America, in Columbus, Ohio. He was a talented draftsman from very early in his life. His father was an architect and builder in Columbus. His mother was the daughter of a New England whaling captain. She was fairly religious, Methodist, and she used to read the Bible on Sundays when young George would sit and draw. He then went to Ohio State University and would do illustrations for the college and other local magazines. And he was a gifted athlete. He played semi-professional basketball and football. And then he did what any aspiring, he knew early on he wanted to be an artist, he did what any aspiring artist in America would do at the time. He made his way to New York.
Impressionists in America were painting the park and scenes of leisure and very, very pretty scenes. Henry said, go out into the world, New York City principally for these young artists, and paint anything that captures your imagination. In other words, there was no categorization, there was no hierarchy that said something had to be beautiful to be worthy of attention. Bellows took that advice immediately and began going out 1906, 1907, all around the city and turning his attention to things that caught his interest, but in many cases were subjects that no one else would have thought, oh, of course, this is a logical thing to do. Wonderful early painting called 42 Kids was so much of that it was actually a bit of a scandal. It was felt to be completely improper as a subject for art. These were street urchins who found their amusements in various ways, some moral, some maybe not so, but swimming in the river, the East River in particular, and wherever they could find and misbehaving. And people found this difficult to take because it did not form any sort of traditional sense of beauty and propriety. In fact, somebody supposedly had objected to the nakedness of the children, and Bellows was said to say, no, they object to the nakedness of the painting.
Yeah. Even people who know one thing about Bellows, that they know that he painted boxing paintings, and they usually know this painting. It's painted in a sort of underground boxing club because boxing was illegal. There had been a law passed in New York State in 1900 which made boxing illegal. The only way you could see these very sort of rough boxing matches were in these sort of underground clubs, clandestine clubs, by becoming a member, usually just for a night. And this particular club, Sharkey's, happened to be opposite Bellows' studio on Broadway. There's something very visceral about it, and the way there's sort of these slashing brushstrokes with canvases applied with this tremendous visceral, vigorous quality. I mean, it really makes one think forward several decades to the work of Francis Bacon.
Look at the brushwork that defines particularly the shoulders and the arms, the upper torsos of those fighters. There's it's no accident that we excerpted that bit of paint from the catalog, because if you take that out of its immediate context, virtually anybody in America who knows anything about art would recognize this painting immediately. How few of them actually recognize the detail of it, because it seemed to, again, sort of transcend into a different realm almost. Bellows didn't go back and paint the great neoclassical temple in progress that was Penn Station. Those of you who've been to Penn Station may wonder, what am I talking about? This big ugly building, round building called Madison Square Garden. That's because the original Penn Station was demolished in the 60s, and if you ever have the urge, you can go out into the New Jersey Meadowlands and there are pieces of it lying out there, columns and things. But he never went back and painted that. It was almost the violence of the process that he was interested in. This excavate. They were blasting, they were digging 24 hours a day. And this was also accompanied by the kind of sort of urban disruption that was typical in New York at this time. one of the things that happens with Bellows is that you see him, in some cases, investigating a subject like the exhibition of Penn Station over a series of pictures. In some cases, you'll also find him going numerous times over to the same place and doing it in a way that you don't realize always that you're looking at the same place. This is Riverside Park, way up in the northern section of Manhattan, with the Hudson and the end of the Palisades there. That is Riverside Park over there, Rain on the River. That is also from Riverside Park there, the floating ice. Different vantage points, and almost always, as Anne said, these are more genteel, almost always some reminder that you're in a huge urban environment. Bellows himself tried, he was too old for the draft, but he did try to enlist in the tank corps and was not accepted for whatever reason. So he was very, very strongly, in this instance, very strongly patriotic. He was very left-leaning, in many ways socialist in a lot of his thoughts about American life and culture. But he was very, very much in favor of American intervention in the war. These paintings were shown, again, publicly in New York, actually storefronts in New York, as part of the war effort.
I think people have mixed feelings about these paintings. As you can see, it's so different to what we've been looking at. I'm mixed feelings myself. I mean, I find them extremely impressive on one level, but they lack, for me, maybe Frank disagrees, but what I think makes Bellows so great in what we've seen up to now, which is that immediacy of engagement with the subject.
This is called Return of the Useless, and it's the return of Belgian citizens who'd been shipped off into forced labor, exhausted, and then were put and shipped back to be literally just dumped back in their homeland. Obviously it's a picture that has, it can't have resonance of what's going to happen later, but it does inevitably, I think, affect us in ways of beyond what Bellows could have intended. But I think the power of this picture, and indeed of many of the pictures in this exhibition, comes from the fact that he has a really developed sense of structural composition.